Good morning and welcome to Cleveland Park Congregational United Church of Christ. We are an open and affirming congregation. Whoever you are and wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. If you're visiting us this morning, please sign the guest book in the entryway. If you're a member, please wear your name tag. Everyone is welcome to join us for coffee hour after church. If you're in the sanctuary, please mute your devices, and if you're on Zoom, please mute yourself. Couple of announcements this morning. Today after coffee hour, we'll gather for the mid-year meeting and get an update on the capital campaign, reports from church programs and committees, and a preview of fall plans. And we'll also ask some future visioning questions. So we'd love to have your input if you can join us. In 2 Sundays is the Interfaith Unity Walk. So from 12:30 to 2:30, walk with participants of all ages to visit houses of worship in Upper Northwest DC and learn about diverse faith traditions. And also, last call for the lost and found. Please take a look and see if anything is yours. I believe it's in the parlor. Good morning, welcome to church.
Thank you, Heidi. Am I picking up? Yes, okay. Good morning, everyone. As always, it is good to see you. And I do encourage you to stay for our mid-year meeting after worship. Not only will you get to hear an update on our capital campaign and the latest news on our still-to-be-installed accessibility ramp, but as Heidi said, you'll get to participate in what I hope is going to be a fun and inspirational future visioning exercise. This morning's service, held the day after the 60th anniversary of the First March on Washington, will focus on what it means to follow the crowd and which crowds we choose to follow. We begin by lighting our candles of hope and healing for the world. May this light illumine all beings, places, and situations without exception, near and far. Please join me for the call to worship. Listen, you who know right from wrong. Hold God's teaching inside you. Pay no attention to insults or mockery. For insults and mockery won't last. Together we pray, source of all that is good, why is it so hard to march to the beat of a different drummer, your drum? So much easier to follow the crowd, any crowd. Help us to understand when to follow and when to resist, when to go with the flow and when to speak against it. The Apostle Paul wrote, "We should not be conformed to this age, because the age of empire always assigns more value to some people than others." And that's a lie. For we are equally valuable, all part of one body, each with different gifts, essential to God's creation of love and justice in the world. Amen. Please rise in body and or spirit as you are able for our opening hymn, "I'm Gonna Live So God Can Use Me." I now invite you to join in a time of silent reflection. When we gather for worship, we heed God's call and honor our need for Sabbath and rest. When we enter into silence, we attune our hearts and open our minds to a presence greater than our own. As we begin this short period of meditation, I encourage you to bring your full self to this present moment. Set aside any distractions, lay down your burdens, and take a deep, life-giving breath. God is with us. Let us reflect upon the week that has passed. What are the joys we have celebrated? And what concerns have we endured? Are there things we have done that we ought not to have done? And are there things we have left undone that we ought to have done? As we look forward to the week ahead, what help will we need from God or neighbor? And what can we do to nurture love of God and love of neighbor in the world? We'll close in prayer. Source of life, for the joys we have celebrated, we give you thanks. God of compassion, for the concerns we have endured, please tend our hearts. Spirit of justice, for those things we have misdone, transform us with your love. Companion God, as we look forward to the week ahead, be ever present with us. And great lover of all, as we seek to nurture love of God and neighbor in the world, guide our actions and our prayers. Amen. In Matthew's Gospel, Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." And I'll say this morning that having been at yesterday's 60th anniversary of the first March on Washington, I know that there are many burdens that we need to lay down, and there are burdens that at times are ours to pick up. Knowing that those same burdens are held by others like us in community with love, and knowing that God is with us in holding them. And so this morning I invite you to discern what are the burdens that you need to set down, to give space for those that with the help of others and with Spirit you are meant to pick up. Knowing that no matter what choice you make, you are loved by a God who above all else is love. Loved by a God of forgiveness, mercy, and grace, no matter what we do or do not do. And now held in the arms of this God, let us pray together. You, who make us hungry for justice, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. I now invite all those online to unmute and those in the sanctuary to turn and greet your neighbor in the pew, sharing the peace and love of God as you do. May peace be with you. All right. Well, I have to say, as much as this is now called a time for all ages, I'm a little bit disappointed that none of our truly younger members of the congregation are here right now. That's okay, because it's a time for all ages. And so I'm actually going to invite forward Dawn, who is co-chair of our Children and Youth Committee, Kristen, who is a member of our Children and Youth Committee, and Marion, who is, oh, and we have kids, yay, but you can still come forward, Marion. Marion, who is, we hope, pending the signing of a contract, going to be our new Sunday school program coordinator, woo! No pressure though. I mean, if he doesn't like us today, that's it. I mean, you know. Magda, are you coming up? Oh, I know. I know. Okay, so did I leave out anybody from the Children and Youth Committee? You know, there's a lot to keep track of up here. Okay, good. All right, Magda, do you want to come over with these fine people? I mean, you're better dressed than, well, no, Kristen, you're pretty well dressed though.
Are we standing?
You're standing. I mean, you can do whatever you want. Be comfortable. In a second, you're going to sit, though, because you're going to need to watch that. Okay. All right. So I have a question. Magda's going to get first chance, but then the rest of you. Okay. All right. So we all know that in 1963 was the first March on Washington. And there were 250,000 people there, which we did not trust me, make yesterday, but still, a good march yesterday. I'm sure it was hot in 1963 too. I'm certain of this, even without climate crisis. And so there were 250,000 people there. They were marching for jobs and freedom, okay? And we all know that Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream speech that Saturday. We know that, right? Yeah, okay, all right. But do you know who was the main organizer of that event that day? And I'll give you a hint, it was not the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It's okay if you don't know, because that's what this Time for All Ages is about, so that we all know. Mary Jane is dying to tell us. Okay. Yes, go ahead. What? Go ahead. Yes, Bayard Rustin, which is kind of a giveaway because it was in your order of service. So, you know, you all should have had your hands up. But so yes, it was Bayard Rustin. And do you know why? Now we're looking at the four of you, no answers from the gallery. Do you know why Bayard Rustin was the primary organizer behind that event, but did not even speak at that event? Nobody?
Because organizing is a lot of work.
That is darn tootin' true. But that wasn't the reason. I mean, that wasn't the primary reason. Anybody know? Yes, Callie?
Was he gay?
He was gay. And that is, in fact, the reason that he did not speak at the 1963 March on Washington. And so we're just going to sit down here and watch a little clip about Bayard Rustin so that we all know who he is and can remember his name, because he was a pretty important guy that day and in years to come. Thank you, Mark.
The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom was the biggest protest America had ever seen. It culminated in civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr.'s iconic I Have a Dream speech. But the man who made it all possible, chief organizer Bayard Rustin, was almost written out of history. Not because he was black, but because he was gay. Born in Pennsylvania in 1912, Bayard was raised as a Quaker. He believed in peace and equality for all, regardless of race, religion, or sexual orientation. But everywhere Bayard looked, he saw injustice and discrimination. The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom was the biggest protest America had ever seen. It culminated in civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr.'s iconic I Have a Dream speech. But the man who made it all possible, chief organizer Bayard Rustin, was almost written out of history. Not because he was black, but because he was gay. Born in Pennsylvania in 1912, Bayard was raised as a Quaker. He believed in peace and equality for all, regardless of race, religion, or sexual orientation. But everywhere Bayard looked, he saw injustice and discrimination against African Americans, against the poor, and the LGBTQ+ community. He made it his mission to campaign for a fairer, freer America through nonviolent civil disobedience. Over the course of his career, he rose within the ranks of the civil rights movement and became a key advisor to Martin Luther King. He never made a secret of his sexuality, but others within the civil rights movement saw it as a weakness. To be honest, homosexuality was illegal in America from his lifetime. In 1953, Bayard was arrested in California for engaging in homosexual activity in public, something opponents of the civil rights movement regularly threatened to expose. As a result, Bayard was forced to work behind the scenes out of the public eye. The March on Washington was Bayard's greatest achievement. The following year, Congress passed the Civil Rights Act. It meant that Bayard could finally come out of the shadows and speak up for what he believed in. Unable to marry his long-term partner, Walter Nagel, Bayard spent his final years campaigning for equal rights for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people across the United States. He died in 1987 at the age of 75, an unsung hero in the fight for a better America. How far do you think we've come in the fight for LGBTQ+ rights?
Bayard Rustin. Look at your order of service. Got a cheat sheet. Let's try it again. Who was the primary organizer behind the 1963 March on Washington? Bayard Rustin. Yes, thank you. All right, now you can go and tell all your friends. Got some super special information that they may not know. Yeah, and send them the YouTube link. All right, thank you all. Oh my goodness. Melissa is now going to read from Paul's letter to the Romans.
Today's reading is from Romans 12, verses 1 through 8. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, on the basis of God's mercy, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your reasonable act of worship. Do not be conformed to this age, but be transformed by the renewing of the mind, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. For by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think of yourself more highly than you ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. For as in one body we have many members, and not all the members have the same function, so we, who are many, are one body in Christ. And individually, we are members one of another. We have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us. Prophecy in proportion to faith, ministry in ministering, the teacher in teaching, the encourager in encouragement, the giver in sincerity, the leader in diligence, and the compassionate in cheerfulness.
Thank you, Melissa. Jane, would you like to come up so we can stand together, since this is our joint sermon time here?
I'm going to ask you to carry me.
Please. My pleasure.
I'm a Renaissance woman, but I can't do a can, a railing and paper.
You are a Renaissance woman, yes. I won't even give the caveat. All right, so I'm going to start. So, Some of you were in this sanctuary 10 years ago, the weekend of the 50th anniversary of the first March on Washington. And if so, you may remember that congregation member Jane Harden, who participated in the first March on Washington in 1963, shared some of her memories of that march, along with thoughts she had about the current status of its twin goals, jobs and freedom. Of course, 10 years ago, we lived in a very different world. 2013 was the beginning of Barack Obama's second term in office, and many of us, me included, assumed we would just keep moving upward on that arc of the moral universe referenced by MLK. However, since then, we've been sobered to realize the struggle for justice continues. We can't become complacent. We must keep doing the work. Jane is a person who spent her entire life working on social justice, and yet even with such a long history, she recently told me she's still learning and growing and ready to participate in ways she wasn't prepared to participate before. This is wonderful modeling for the rest of us. Jane is now going to share some of her memories of that first March on Washington, along with some thoughts about joining movements and which movements to join. When she's finished, I promised her I'd share a few reflections from my participation in yesterday's 60th anniversary of the first March on Washington. Jane. Get to the mic as much as you can.
Well, originally, I did want to talk a lot. Because there is a lot to say about that first March.
You're going to have it right.
I'm going to have.
Or I can give you the lapel mic. Which would you prefer?
Let's do this. I'll
We
figure
do
it
that?
out.
Okay.
But you can take it.
I will. Absolutely. There you go.
At first, because it's such a happy memory, I wanted to essentially go through that sermon. But it was 10 years ago, and much is happening.
Okay, Jane, we're going to give you the lapel mic. Because
This
people
is-
want to hear you.
Can you hear me without the mic?
No, because people online can't hear
Got
you.
it. Okay.
All right, no worries. No worries at all. Do you mind if I clip?
How's this? Ellen helps. But there is so much going on in the world now about these issues. I didn't want to take the time to go over the details that I love because I was there and various connections. I do have a copy of that speech and a sermon, and we will have that available. But when I was rereading that speech, and Ellen had helped me draft it, Ellen had asked me to think of what was most important from that speech, and most important to me, that I took away from the march in '63. And here is what I had said 10 years ago. It's what my main takeaway was: it's important to be opening to joining movements and participating in events that others have initiated and are organizing. And that is an issue that is current in this church right now. And then, of course, the flip side of this, it's also important to welcome others when you are planning an initiative to reach out to others. And that is what we're also looking at today. And now a note about Bayard Rustin and A. Phillips Randolph, because Bayard Rustin was a remarkable man, but so were the labor leaders who worked with him. In very few environments do I think he would have been as respected as he deserved and as admired as he deserved as the union leaders who worked with him. And they probably did not like to think about the other part of his life, but they were open to working with him because they had the same ideals. A. Philip Randolph, a union leader, the head of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, along with Bayard Rustin, was one of the principal organizers of the movement, but of the '63 march. But what was beautiful about that is how widely they spread their leadership. They did reach out. They reached out to organizations that they knew didn't like them, and organizations they didn't particularly like, but they had the common goals of jobs and freedom. And that was one of my great memories and takeaways from the march, was how it was planned. I happened to be working for a small organization that grew out of Senior Citizens for Kennedy, and it had become a small nonprofit working on trying to pass Medicare, which was even more disliked in those days than the idea of a march for jobs and freedom. But I was there as a gopher, a small minor staff employee, seeing how the men and union men were working together to get the word spread. And the word went out, and because they were welcoming of everyone. The day of the march is probably the single happiest day, one of the single happiest days of my life. I have never felt such joy. And one of the reasons, I think, for the joy is we had all been terrified or worried about what would happen. Almost everyone from Ward 3 was against the march, and I choose that because I know Ward 3, but then in the city, because they were afraid of the violence. And the hospitals, no alcohol beverages could be served in the city on that day. The hospitals were not accepting, they were canceling all their scheduled operations to be available for the bodies and the problems that would be coming, that would be brought in. And I went to work that morning. Almost no one was downtown, and I had to go to work. And I wasn't really scared that much, but it was eerie. I was the only person in 6 or 8 blocks I saw. Well, we got to our office, and there wasn't that much work to do. And then the reports started coming in, favorable reports. And we looked out the window. We were at 17th and K, and it looked friendly to us. And we went out and joined the march. And we just started walking along Pennsylvania Avenue, and then we got folded in. And one reporter made a very wise observation. It wasn't a march. Americans don't know how to march, thank goodness. In fact, they amble. They don't even know we don't even know how to walk in straight lines. But it was a joyous moment. And I think a lot of that exhilaration came from the bad stuff hadn't happened. And now what did I see and hear? Nothing, really. And the Lincoln Memorial holds 10,000 people. They couldn't squeeze the next 190,000 in, even if we sat on laps. And there was no real sound effect. We heard nothing. Now later, we could hear it on TV or read about it, but it didn't make that much difference to all of us that we couldn't hear. because we were able and proud to be able to bear witness, by standing there in the crowds, being part of the crowd, we were bearing witness to what we believed in, that people, regardless of color, should have jobs and freedom. And now I did pick up a few other tips about attending rallies and conferences, and I passed them on to you, and they have been helpful. Don't expect to hear anything. Don't expect to see anything. Even with jumbotrons, it's still hard. Be there because you care about it and you can enjoy it and you think and you are helping to make a difference on the cause you believe in. And that is what I will leave you with, because I think Ellen has much more to say, and I appreciate her, asking me to join in for a little history. But now I look forward to hearing Ellen go forward. Thank you.
Ellen does not have a lot more to say. Jane is the main event. However, I do have a little something to say to Jane. Jane, can you move just a teach over? Thank you. Because I want to give you a t-shirt from yesterday's march, since, while I know you weren't there in body, you were certainly there in spirit. It's the same one I'm wearing. 60th March on Washington, not a commemoration, a continuation.
Oh,
that is for you.
Well, I won't put it on in front of you. But you will see me wearing this wonderful t-shirt.
All right, so you can stand right there, Jane, since, like I said, this is a joint effort. So while I just say a couple more words, be right here with me. So as the t-shirt says, the theme of yesterday's 60th anniversary of the first March on Washington was not a commemoration, a continuation. In other words, we're not just celebrating what was accomplished 60 years ago, not in an era when so much is unraveling, not when there's still so much to be done. And yet, even with the knowledge of all we're facing in our country right now, yesterday's event, as was that 60 years ago, yesterday's event was joyful. It was a wonderful reminder of how far we've come. Remember what I said about Bayard Rustin earlier. At that first March on Washington, there were no gay speakers, no women speakers, and certainly no trans speakers. But yesterday, there were all of the above, many of the above. And this is huge, because it means people working for justice are really beginning to understand that true justice is never just for one part of God's body, it's for every part. No one gets left behind. So when I heard a 14-year-old Jewish boy and a beautiful Black trans woman and a Black woman who marched but could not speak in 1963, I thought, perhaps we really are moving forward. Maybe the arc of the moral universe really does bend towards justice. In any case, there were all sorts of crowds there yesterday, many of which I'd be willing to follow. Labor unions, as Jane spoke about, LGBTQ groups, Black sororities and fraternities, civil rights lawyers, religious communities, reproductive and women's rights groups, climate justice organizations, and all sorts of other movements working to create positive change. Not to mention the delightful collection of children soaking their feet in the reflecting pool. After all, it is August in DC. I know it might feel overwhelming to accept that the struggle for justice is forever. But yesterday I thought, well, perhaps this notion could be uplifting. That every day we have a chance to make this world a better place. That every day we can be drum majors for justice. that every day we can be the change we wish to see. We can be the change we wish to see. Amen.
Thank you. Oh, one last word. Hats off to my physical therapy trainer.
Amen to that. It is now the time in our service when we share our deep joys and concerns, silently or out loud, with God and with one another. I'll share those we've already received, plus any posted in the chat room, and then invite those in the sanctuary to share. God, hear our healing prayers for Pat, who is recovering from a stroke, Terry, who is recovering from a stroke, Jason's partner, Jim, as he begins cancer treatment, Julia after ankle surgery, Lasse in his final weeks, and all who are managing long-term health concerns and diagnoses. God, hear our prayers for all those returning to school this month and next, the families and friends of the victims of yesterday's racist shootings in Florida, the family of Bill Harwood as they grieve his death, the family of Paco Corrales as they grieve his death, the people of Hawaii, Baja, Southern California, and all other places dealing with natural and human-made disaster, all who are grieving the loss of loved ones, and anyone, anywhere who is sick or grieving or in need. I'll check the chat to see if there are any concerns. Is there anyone in the sanctuary who would like to share a concern? Serena?
So this morning on the news, I saw that a 14-year-old girl was stabbed to death on the corner of, excuse me, 14th and T Streets Northwest, which is not too far from the Shaw Community Center. And I don't know anything about this young person. And of course, the first thing that came to my mind was, I hope it's not one of ours. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter. The teens, the youth in this city are really at risk, and we need to do something about it.
Thank you, Serena. Other concerns? Emily? Well, you're welcome to say it without the microphone. No? Okay. You can let me know later and I can add it to the prayers. Other concerns? All right, we'll turn to joys. God, we give thanks for Maggie's brother starting college and for Callie helping her set up her classroom last week. For all those who marched yesterday in the 60th anniversary of the first March on Washington, for Dorothy's birthday, and for all those who devote their lives to creating peace, joy, and justice in this world. Other joys. Callie.
Last night I went to a square dancing event at Pierce Mill, and it was so thoroughly joyful. There were well over 100 people. There was live string music. It was very beginner friendly, and it was, as someone who sometimes often feels intimidated in new social situations, it was just such a joy to do something new, to feel free and fun, and just to be in the company of so many happy people.
Thank you, Callie. That's wonderful. Other joys? Yes, Sybil.
Hi, my dad, who some of you met, he's visited this church before COVID, and he certainly enjoyed the hybrid service, and I think looking forward to visiting in person again once the ramp is installed. Anyway, he turns 90 tomorrow, so we're very excited to celebrate his birthday.
Aw, happy birthday, John. Any other joys? Serena.
This is actually kind of silly, but with Sybil marking her father's 90th birthday, I'd like to celebrate the life of Bob Barker, who passed away yesterday. And somebody said that he came the closest to 100 without going over. So I just, I've always had Bob Barker in my life, so I just want to celebrate his life.
Thank you, Serena. I love that. Who came closest to 100 without going over. Excellent. Yes, Margaret.
Well, if Serena can add a slightly silly note, then so can I. But Callie's talk of square dancing reminds me of a square dance we had here in the parlor a few years back. I think Chris and Mike organized it. I'm not sure about that. But at any rate, Dick Jorgensen was absolutely lethal when it came to swing your partner. And it was a great evening.
I'll add as a reminder, we still don't know the full story of what went on in the basement dance when Ed and Lee Roll met.
Good thing Lee's not here. All right, let us pray. Loving God, listen to the prayers of your people. Comfort and nourish us in both our joys and our concerns, spoken or unspoken, and hold us tenderly as we face the many different experiences that life and being human can bring. Holy and gracious Spirit, we are grateful for your presence as we move into this new week, a time that will bring forth its own sorrows and joys. Remind us to hold one another in love and prayer, reaching out as we are able to lend a hand, offer support, or share in celebration. We give thanks for the blessing of this congregation in our lives and pray that we might be a blessing to others in return. In your compassionate name, amen. And now I invite you to hold all of these joys and concerns in your heart as we hear a musical offering from Kristen, Dorothy, and Catherine. And I believe that Kristen, who is the composer, would like to introduce it.
Hi, my name is Kristen Kotz, for those who don't know me. And this is a piece called Accidental Mediation. And it was suggested that I introduce it. I wrote it because Catherine suggested that I write something for flute and piano that had rich jazz chords under it. And as I explored jazz patterns and started to do it, I realized that I was mediating between accidentals, which are sharps and flats that come up in a key that it's not part of the original key. And I started to think about how we mediate accidents and accidentals in our own lives. And I just think that it's interesting that out of all of the accidentals and all of the mediation came a complete piece. And I think the metaphor is that even accidents can be part of a broader plan. And Dorothy Mora and Catherine Pruitt.
gosh, thank you. That was gorgeous. Well, this is the time in our service when we receive the offering in grateful appreciation for the life and work of this beloved community. To support the ongoing work of our church, I ask that you please give in person, via mail, or online as you are able. If you're in the sanctuary, you can contribute as the offering plate is passed. You're also welcome to take out your phone and scan the QR code on the back of your worship bulletin. This will take you to the donate page of our website. If you've already donated, I welcome you to take one of the offering cards in the pew racks and put it in the plate as a symbol of your giving. For those on Zoom, the link to our donate page is in the chat room. And to all, I thank you for your gifts of time, talent, and treasure. As the offering is being collected, we'll hear Latia Barrett sing Precious Lord, which I understand was the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s favorite hymn. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand, I am tired, I am weak, I am worn through the storm, through the night. Lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me on. When my way grows drear, precious Lord, linger near. When my life is almost gone, hear my cry. remain standing for our closing hymn, commission and Sun benediction. Our closing hymn can be found on page 442, and we will sing all of the English verses. Oh, well, if you want to do Swahili, be my guest. Zulu, excuse me. Is it Zulu? Okay, yes. Do not do Swahili. Do Zulu if you are not going to do English. I don't really think we need any more of a commission than that. So please join me in the Sun benediction. Lord, be with you till we meet again. Glory blesses and all you. Can I help you?
It says show chat. Church meeting in the fall on Zoom. So see what's happening. So Madrid,
What's the-
Betis, Real Madrid, Betis, Real Madrid, Sevilla, Real Madrid,
Valencia.
Valencia. Okay.
What about the guy with the big hair, the afro? There's
Guy
with
with
an M. That played for Real Madrid for a really long time. He's still-
Roberto Carlos. He was Brazilian. He had the big afro.
Yeah,
He was a left back.
I don't think that's what I'm thinking.
Welcome to the mid-year meeting. This is our time for gathering in between our more formal January meetings that begin each church year. We're going to hear some highlights from committee members of the work of the year so far, and then we're going to do, in addition, we're doing a visioning exercise that will let us think about the year to come and beyond. So with that, I will turn it over to Pastor Ellen to open us with a welcoming prayer.
And we also have colored pens, all right? So you know it's going to be fun. Why don't we just start by, I always like when we kind of shift gears to just land where we are. As Carolyn said, there was a point in the service where she just thought, I'd just like to sit here in this energy all day long. But then the service ended, and then we went into the great energy of coffee hour and singing happy birthday. And now we're shifting gears again and coming back into the sanctuary. And so, let's just breathe out. If you're chewing, you're welcome to keep chewing. It's fine. Got some good pinwheels in there for anybody who needs a little protein. And I invite you just to feel a sense of profound gratitude for that which is good in your life. Knowing that, of course, we all have burdens and cares. Just in this moment, let's feel the gratitude for all that is good in our lives. May we bring this sense of gratitude into this meeting, into the things we're going to discuss, into our hopes and visions for the future. Amen. Which I guess brings me to me. Give me just a second then. I actually have a new future visioning folder on my computer. Here we go. So you might recall that the theme of my 2022, a year ago, 2022 sabbatical was, what's next? And I'm happy to say that this question has informed and inspired much of the work and reflection our congregation has done this past year. Even better, we haven't rushed to answer that question, rather allowing it to percolate and create space for Spirit to speak. As part of this process, our lay leadership has decided not to jump into creating a new strategic plan, but to take a step back, do some discernment, and engage in a process of future visioning, or dreaming, if you will. Now, this has a couple of different parts, and we discussed these at our last council meeting a couple of weeks ago. The first has to do with how we make decisions. Now, our large, small church, as I like to call us, can easily overstretch. I'm an overfunctioner, and I know many of you have this tendency as well. So I was happy to find a decision-making process created by Cameron Trimble, that's the one that I referenced that's in the back, called the Discernment Compass. And I put a few copies, as I said, back there for anyone interested, but the basic premise is that we don't just dive into things because they seem like a good idea. Happily, there are a lot of good ideas out there. Or because one person is excited about it, which, has sometimes been a tendency of our congregation in the past. Rather, we ask ourselves as a community if a plan, program, or project is truly ours to do. And we answer by reflecting on a few additional questions, such as, do we have the resources, time, money, volunteers? Do we have the energy/capacity? Does it align with our mission and values, etc.? Because not every good idea is meant to be done by us. Our task is to discern which ones we are meant to do. As many of you know, my favorite quotation about vocation or call is by Frederick Buechner, who wrote, "The place God calls you to is the place where your deep hunger and the world's deep need meet." The place God calls you to is the place where your deep hunger and the world's deep need meet. Think about this for a minute. The world's need is unending, meaning we can serve in an infinite number of ways, so we have to ask ourselves, what's the way that also fulfills our own deep hunger? In what way can we serve that will actually bring us joy? The second part of the sort of discernment, reflection, future visioning, dreaming process that the council talked about is envisioning the future. Unfortunately, this vision is so often constrained by our understanding of the present or our, shall we say, preconceived notions about the present. That's why strategic plans are very often prescriptive, but not transformative. Cameron Trimble says that when we think in 3 to 5 year blocks, the time span of most strategic plans, our brains are incapable of thinking outside our current systems, structures, and ways of being. Thus, when she does future visioning with congregations, she encourages them to think 20, 30, and I'm not saying they're doing strategic plans for this or not, this is visioning, but when she does future visioning with congregations, she encourages them to think 20, 30, even 50 years into the future, really stretching their imaginations by encountering a world they can't begin to pretend they understand. So this morning, I'm hoping you'll all agree to do some future visioning in the form of an afternoon workshop later this year. Well, I'm hoping you'll agree to do the little exercise Callie and I have for you right now. But then based on that, I'm hoping that you'll agree to do some future visioning in the form of an afternoon workshop later in the year. Today, Callie and I are just going to offer a little appetizer or taste of what this might include. In a moment, she's going to introduce you to the first of 2 questions. One for you to answer individually, one for you to discuss/answer in pairs. But before she does, I'm going to hope to jumpstart your imagination by reading 2 short passages from the book of Acts. From Acts chapter 2. All who believed were together and had all things in common. They would sell their possessions and goods and distribute the proceeds to all as any had need. Day by day, as they spent much time together, they broke bread at home and ate their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having the goodwill of all the people. And from Acts chapter 4. Now the whole group of those who believed were of one heart and soul, and no one claimed private ownership of any possessions, but everything they owned was held in common. There was not a needy person among them. For as many as owned lands or houses sold them and brought the proceeds of what was sold. They laid it at the apostles' feet, and it was distributed to each as any had need.
All right, so we do have 2 questions, as Ellen said, and we'll do them one at a time. So very practically, in a moment, not yet, Ellen is going to pass these out, and we'll give you 5 minutes, but don't worry about being a timekeeper or anything like that. We will ring a bell so that you can just focus on doing this activity and not worrying about, constraints of being on time and such. We want to invite you, when you do this exercise, to actually get up out of your pew and walk to somewhere else in the church. So it could just be the rocking chair in the back or a pew up front, or you can go sit on a couch in the parlor or the front step of the church, but get up and move. Dreaming and imagining is embodied work, and that's part of the reason we have colored pens and we're asking you to move, and maybe you might want to consider taking a few deep breaths before you settle into the question. I have found in my own life, and as we feel our way forward with dreaming and future visioning, that we have to be receptive to the small things that feel weird and that feel trivial and that feel so easy to overlook. And so we're trying to give you as many nudges as possible to join us in that head and heart space. Okay, I think those are all the practicals. We'll give you the worksheet, we'll give you 5 minutes, we'll ring a bell, we invite you to get up and move. And your first question is this: if fear of scarcity of time, money, and other resources weren't a limiting factor, how might you live differently? All right, so Ellen will pass out the accoutrements and then go ahead and get settled. All right, well, thank you so much for doing that first exercise. In part 2, we will similarly take 5 minutes apart and then we'll come back. But this time we're actually going to share a little bit. And we're going to ask you, instead of going off by yourself, to find someone that you can partner with to think through this next question together. And folks on Zoom, we've not forgotten you. I believe we figured a breakout room, but it's really just 3 folks, so as long as they're not on sound. Okay. Lovely. Okay, so folks online, the questions will be in the chat and you can go ahead and speak, and we will not have the sound on, so you can just have your conversation. So with that in mind, our second question is, what are some ways that our church could help you to practice living differently? And again, feel free to get up, move, find a partner, 5 minutes, we'll ring a bell and then come back and share. Sure. Sorry to be unclear, folks. So please, Ellen's handing out question number 2. If you could then find a partner and spend the next 5 minutes with them discussing the question. And after 5 minutes, we'll ring the bell and we'll come back as a congregation and share some of our responses.
All right, so everyone, I hope that the online folks had an opportunity to chat with one another, but I know all of you did. And so I guess my first question is, oh, and by the way, John C. who is celebrating his mother's 94th birthday today, yay, it has very kindly, but he's our clerk and he's not here, so he's very kindly offered to actually watch the recording and take notes, so we don't have to worry about that, meaning that you know, we will be able to capture your wonderful ideas. So my first question is, and thank you, Alan. Alan's going to come around so people can share and those online can hear. No, you don't need to share. You just need to be the person to walk the mic around. Yay, thank you, okay. Would anybody like to share any of what they wrote for the first question, that individual question about how you might choose to live differently if, you know, you didn't feel constrained by certain factors? Yeah, John, and then Christina.
I'd volunteer more.
Says the guy who is now president of his son's PTA. Thank you, John.
Oh, I actually hadn't volunteered, but John handed me the microphone.
Oh, Christina, yeah, it was Christina.
Okay. Yeah, oh, sorry, okay, sorry. I feel like I would just have a slower pace of life, which is like a very DC thing to say, but like
slower
don't
pace of
enjoy my
life.
pace of life, and I would have a slower pace of life.
Yeah, no, I've brought up a number of times in groups and in sermons, Tricia Hersey's great book, Rest is Resistance. Oh yeah, Edmund.
When I turned 80, I started figuring out that I'm in the disposition era of life. And so I think I'm having some success in focusing more on giving and more focus on the creativity of the giving.
Oh, I love that, the creativity of the giving.
But I confess that I would probably indulge my collecting habits that, you know, musical
Edmund loves collecting musical instruments, for instance.
I'd probably indulge some of those compulsive habits too.
Thank you, Edmund. Jane. Oh, wait, what?
This may embarrass Edmund slightly, but he carved this cane for me, and
Ooh,
I needed
nice.
it, and now it is a fashion statement.
Yes, it is. Now, Emily.
I just have this really long list. More activism for justice issues, more volunteering, more reading and learning, more time and attention to my daughter. That's like actually a big one. More self-care, exercise, gardening, food prep, more consistent and regular spiritual practice, more time and attention to personal relationships, friends and family.
Yeah, no, those are all, I mean, I'm guessing many of those appeared at least in the thoughts of many of us. Anybody else want to share what you wrote individually?
I want to learn calculus.
You want to learn calculus?
I want to take up sailing.
Okay. All
and
right.
others.
Talk to Dan about
I want to
sailing.
learn to play the cello.
Okay. All right. All at the same time?
There's all the time in the world, right?
Right. That's right. Exactly. That was the premise. Carol.
I think about the cost of bad health or unnecessarily impaired health for myself and others, and what can you do about it, including make friends with doctors in the midst. But, you know, we can all diminish the cost by making more sense in so many ways, and we don't do it.
Yeah, and you know, Carol, actually, what you say about, you know, Alan's reaching for the mic, you know, doctors in our midst, there are many of us who have used our professional expertise to help other members of the congregation, and I'm sure other people in your lives. I mean, I think recently of Michael Hargreaves, who's a realtor, helping Jane with a very necessary move to a new apartment. Yeah. Others? Yeah. Carly. For those of you who haven't seen Carly in a while, she was a member for a number of years before COVID and moved to Philadelphia and got married, and now she's back. Yay.
I said I would spend more time doing things that don't have a productive purpose. And I think even sometimes with my free time, I turn it into like, oh, I want to go to all these places. I want to travel to all these places. I want to read all these books. I want to do all these things. And so I think if there was no scarcity of time, just being still more, like taking a walk without like listening to a podcast or an audiobook or something, at the same time. Yeah.
There are so many studies that show that creativity emerges from boredom and downtime. It's on.
It's on. I kind of started out with saying that I would wander or stay according to my mood, that I would not worry about the planning, just kind of go, and I would give away more things and not worry about somebody being worthy, that I would strike judgmental out of my decisions.
Thank you, Carolyn. Anyone else before we move on to some of the thoughts you had in your group discussions? Okay, so we would love to hear what your groups came up with for ways that our congregation might help us practice living in different ways. Heidi? And if anyone online wants to share, just raise your little graphic hand or your real hand.
And we said that the church can remind us to center others and community over the tasks and busyness we tend to focus on, which kind of echoes what people are saying individually. It can expose us to other perspectives and opportunities and help us to discern what is good and worthwhile.
Thank you, Heidi. John.
Echoing what Heidi just said about exposing us to things that we're just unfamiliar with. So we know there are other needs or other things to do or to help with.
Thank you. Nancy.
I think the church is wonderful at deciding to hop to if an individual or a group of people have an issue, for example, grief or aging. And my concern is that the response is concentrated into a short time. And for example, grief, it was sort of, 5 or 6 sessions, and then it was over. And the grief's not over. And then the aging monthly, and it was a great help at the time, but how any of us are responding to aging or processing it 6 months later or a year later may address issues that we didn't think of bringing up when we addressed it. So some sort of continuity and long-term commitment to whatever the concern may be or the problem may be.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, sort of a continuity of various groups with a commonality, but that they keep meeting on a regular basis over time. Yeah, thank you.
Nancy, didn't aging stop for you? It stopped for me.
That group solved aging for Mary Jane. Other groups. Yeah, Ben.
Hello. So we talked about a few different things, but one of the things that came up, for me specifically, is I have seasons of life where I have more flexibility, and seasons of life where I have very little flexibility. So, knowing about ways where I can contribute, maybe I can't sign up to be on a committee for a year, but I can, do a certain thing for a service one day, or be involved in a project that goes over a few months or so. So just knowing more about those opportunities where it's you can be involved even if you're not, on the committee for 1-2 years. Those sorts of things are always great ways to get more people involved.
So practicing flexibility in the way that we sort of organize ourselves and, do the work of the church, if you will. Yeah. And just so you know, anybody is always welcome to serve on a committee or in a program area, knowing that there will be times in your life where you might have to say to that group, I need to step back for 3 months or whatever. So I think that is there, but maybe it needs to be made clearer to people so that people feel comfortable, with the realities of their lives. Jane? So what I hear you saying is that by really committing yourself to this group, in this case, Wednesday morning meditation, for a period of time, it didn't happen overnight, but over that period of time, you really feel like there are things that you've learned about yourself and actually been able to heal from because of your commitment to participating in that group. And I guess in answer again to Nancy's question, because that group is a group that has met over time and connected with one another. Probably not everybody wants to meet in a group that is every single week, but having that continuity sounds really important. Jane?
You had begun the continuity before that, the overnight stay at Bon Secours.
Oh, right. Yeah, the overnight retreat.
Those meetings
Yeah.
that I'd attended, or sessions, helped to prepare me to be ready for meditation.
Yeah. Thank you. Other ideas for ways that this congregation can help us to practice living differently? Kelly, did you want to share it? You don't have to.
So 2 thoughts came to me. One is creating a culture in this church where we can regularly say no to things. I think that's a skill we need here, but I think it's a skill that we really need in other aspects of our lives, and that it's hard to practice. It's not always safe to practice in other spaces. And so creating a space and a sense of community where people can propose ideas and people don't have to go along with them, or people can invite you to do things, and it's okay to say, no, I can't do that. A week later, I still can't do that. Weeks later, I still can't do that, and that's okay. Not to become, like a pit of negativity, but just to be honest about what is ours. That was one thing that came to mind as a sort of general skill that I think would benefit me broadly, but in various aspects of our lives. The other is, we framed the question as, how can our church be a community that helps us to practice living differently? And one of the thoughts that arose for me was, how can we more intentionally practice being a community, even before we get to living differently? I think the fact of attempting to be community already in and of itself is trying to live differently than we're encouraged and supported in many ways. So for me, my mind goes towards food and towards small gatherings and thinking about, are there ways that we can knit our lives together a little bit more closely, maybe not on the macro scale of the whole congregation, but somehow our relationships can create tendrils of support.
Yeah, along those lines, Callie, John Osborne sent me, as he is wont to do, an article this morning. It feels like my dad. But he sent me this article this morning that I encourage anybody who gets the post to read. It's an opinion piece by Perry, what's his last name? I'll get it in a second. Perry Bacon, thank you, Perry Bacon Jr. And it's called, I Left the Church and now long for a quote unquote church for the nuns, N-O-N-E-S. I'm sure you all know what the nuns are, meaning unaffiliated, spiritual, but not religious. And what he decided he was looking for, I decided sounded exactly like us, so I emailed him. So we'll see. But anyway, I think that, yeah, practicing community, people are, they're not yearning for dogma, they're yearning for community. And I also think that, just to bring up a topic Callie and I have discussed many times, we all live in a capitalist culture, just naming it. And it's the air in which we breathe, the water we swim. So that old joke of, the fish says to the other fish, how's the water? And the first fish says, what water? Because how do you know it's water if that's where you live all the time? So we're so used to everything being transactional. And my great desire would be that we can practice being a community that is more relational than we are transactional. And I think that to a large extent we do that, but I think just really bringing intention to that in all ways. Anybody else from small groups want to share anything before we move forward in our meeting? I really appreciate your being willing to play in our sandbox. Not right now? Okay, great. Feel free, please, if there are things that you didn't feel comfortable sharing here, but you'd still like, me or Callie or Heidi to know about, send us an email. So thank you all.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So at this point on the agenda, we invite the chairs to share committee highlights. I think everyone got passed around a copy of the mid-year update. If not, there are copies in the back that have very thorough reports from all of the committee chairs, so we're not asking the committee chairs to have to read all of that back to you. But we are inviting committee chairs to do is if there's one particular thing they'd like to highlight and make sure the congregation is aware of, now is when they can share that. So I'll just go through in the order of the committees that are in the mid-year update. We do not currently have an adult programs chair, so I'll just note, in the spirit of people who want to volunteer more, we are looking for an adult programs chair. Serena, Buildings and Grounds, would you like to highlight anything?
The one thing that I would like to highlight is that we have, for a long time, been but knowing we needed to replace the back door on the church. It's falling off of its hinges, and it's downstairs, out to the back padded area from the Kinderhouse area. Anyway, we've had 3 contractors come in and give us bids. I'm very pleased that we were concerned that it was going to be a long-term project and something that was quite difficult, but each of the contractors said that it would be a one-day project and they could do it within 4 weeks. So we're hoping to have it done soon. I don't know if it's going to be as cheap as we'd hoped it would be, but when we got the first bid of like $6,000 when we were actually having the building, the basement redone. It's gone up since then, which to my dismay, but we're hoping it will happen soon. So.
Thank you, Serena.
Alan, if you still have a mic back there, children and youth, I think Dawn has an update, which we got a sneak preview of during the service.
I mean, we talked about it in service, but before he left today, Marion did sign the contract. So we now officially have a new Sunday school coordinator position. And if it's actually a coordinator position as opposed to Bella ending up being like a lead teacher, whatever, then I'm hoping that I can stay in place with my mental sanity as the children and youth co-chair. So we'll see, but that's our update. So lots of good things to come, and we really lucked out. He came as a gift from God. through idealist. I don't know.
Would you like me to share his very short bio? He grew up in Corning, New York, going to the First Congregational UCC of Corning, New York. He has experience as a Sunday school teacher. He graduated from Guilford College in North Carolina, which is a Quaker-based school, in 2020 with a religious studies major. He has a twin sister and an older sister, and he's currently living in Columbia Heights with his twin sister. Any other questions? All right.
Okay, Clergy Congregation Relations Committee, is Ellen here?
Ellen Campbell has stepped down as chair of that committee. And Sybil, did you want to say anything, or just, I don't know that there's much to say, but the current members are Sybil and Don Blanchon and Elizabeth Sheeman. Elizabeth has stepped up to be the sort of chair coordinating role. And I think the important thing about that committee is that they always want you to know that while they are, in general, a support committee for me, if there were a problem between me and the congregation, this would be the committee that somebody would take a concern to.
Yeah, thanks, Ellen. Yeah, because Dawn and Elizabeth aren't here. I just wanted to say, as most of you know, like congregational churches, UCC churches are lay-led. We don't, and so even though Ellen leads us, Ellen works for us, which is sort of sometimes awkward. And so and remember all of the above. So the CCR is sort of an informal liaison with Ellen and the council. So if anyone has any questions, talk to me, Dawn or Elizabeth, or we'd be happy to to talk about anything that you have as a celebration or concern. Thanks.
Thank you. Communications and technology, from one Turner to another.
Hi, everyone. I'm not going to reread what's on the handout here, but I just want to thank all the digital deacons. We are an all-volunteer kind of force, and so every Sunday, and then also like for Sunday school or whatever, they're helping out with the service. I just want to say thank you. You all do a wonderful job. And the other thing is we are going to have to revamp the church website. It has reached its end of life. Basically, the templates that were used are coming to an end and can't be revised or updated. So we're in that process. And please, if you have any ideas or input, much appreciate those. Thank you.
Thank you. Congregation Care, Nancy.
There's more than you possibly can want to read in the notes here. Most of our work has involved small things which together I'm hoping make something larger. We've had 2 long-term commitments this period to grief and to aging, and have held meetings after church and weekly and or monthly meetings to address these topics with people who wanted to know more and talk more about them. And we've had a lot of personal reaching out to people with birthdays. We've had a gathering at Lee Roll's house for new members. We continue to drive people who need rides. The main thing I would ask is that anyone who knows of someone in the congregation in need of something that we can help with and support, please get in touch.
Thank you. Ms. Trish, Fellowship. Great.
Only one left here. But we, so I'm Christina, everyone, Chauvenet. Trish isn't here today, but I've been on the Fellowship Committee, I think since I joined about a year ago. Fellowship Committee, we've been, back to organizing our coffee hour. I think we are always in need of people to sign up for coffee hour. So that's just something I would underline. We've kind of tried, one of the things we're trying to do is really outline ways to make it easier for people to help with coffee hour, make sure you feel comfortable with hosting coffee hour, and make sure that it's a very easy experience for everyone. So I think we're getting back in the swing of that. And yeah, if you have any thoughts, ideas, want to share, just let me know. And there's a sign-up sheet in the fellowship hall if you would like to sign up.
And Fellowship very generously hosts coffee hour once a month. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And you can just pass the mic over to Emily for mission and social action.
I actually can't really think of one specific highlight. I guess just to mention, beginning of the year, we did like a survey, and like there's not a huge, doesn't seem to be a huge availability or interest in ongoing, sort of like ongoing activities, but we've done stuff after worship that has been worked out pretty well, like with the period packs and postcards. So we're kind of just trying to like figure that. Yeah, we just did our allocations. It was $20,000, so that's good. Right. Yeah.
Do we have anybody? Nobody's here to speak for the music committee today, right?
So obviously music is going great. Choir is going to start back up in 2 weeks. You probably all know that Harold does all but one Sunday a month, and Catherine is our one Sunday a month person. I said recently that she's our new Dan Stokes because she is doing way more than accompanying one Sunday a month. She's organizing our entire music room, and it's just wonderful. So we're very blessed with our musicians, as we already are, always have been. What we're hoping is that we can hire a male soloist voice. Latia is our soprano soloist that we hire on the female side, and so we're just really hoping we can hire a male voice this fall just to boost that section of the choir, and then maybe get some other male voices to participate. What's that? You are so right, lower voices. Thank you for being clear about that, because we have many lower voices that do not identify as male.
Okay, so the last two committees are trustees and worship, and we'll hear from Don Blanchon and the trustees in a minute. And I don't know if anyone's here to represent the worship committee because Dan is not here today. Is there anything you wanted to say?
Okay, great. Worship committee is very pleased with how the summer went with Liz. We are always not willing, that's the wrong verb. We are always receptive, open, grateful for folks who want to participate in worship, and certainly hear what was shared earlier of like, not everyone can join a committee and make a full year commitment, but we often do have one-off Sunday needs for coverage. And so if you're interested in offering a sermon or in leading a call to worship or something of that nature, please feel free to be in touch with me or Dan or Ellen. We want people to feel involved in worship.
Yeah, for worship support, we do have a long list of people who are on our worship support team, and that the worship support includes just preparing the sanctuary in the morning for the service. And we don't have technological things to do anymore. And, we're actually, I think, going to have a discussion about whether we keep the windows open anymore or not. But it's a very, very easy thing to do. And in spite of the fact that we have this long list, we seem to be having trouble getting people to sign up. And part of it is that people have been out of town. But if we can get, in my opinion, we could do this like a reader. Anybody can sign up for it. It's just not that difficult. So I'm hoping that we can do something like that rather than having a system like we used to.
Well, yeah, and now that the worship tech, God bless them, folks, do all of the sound stuff in preparation, really the most important part of the job is greeting. And that's a really important part of the job. That's the first face someone sees when they walk in our door, whether they're already part of us or somebody who's coming in for the first time.
Okay. Thank you to committee chairs for your updates and for serving in your positions. So it's time for a couple of very specific updates. First is financial. Don Marshall can't join us today, so Robert Glass will be giving the financial update.
Well, good morning. I'm Robert Glass. I'm your financial secretary, the one keeping up with your pledges and so forth. The financial report that we handed out was prepared by Don Marshall, our treasurer, and the notes and commentary is mostly his, or almost entirely his. I have a few comments myself. The church is in good financial shape. Our 2023 income and expenses are on track with our budget, and there are no areas of immediate concern. Assuming we meet our pledge goal, and we nearly always do, we'll likely finish the year slightly ahead of budget, and thanks partly to an unexpected memorial gift, which I'll come back to. Our investment funds are doing well, reflecting the improvements in the stock market. We balanced this year's budget by carrying over $19,358 from our 2022 surplus. This was a reasonable step to take, given that we were in a time of post-pandemic transition. However, our operating expenses have increased significantly, namely inflation and the resulting higher cost of living, which this year, John Tishy tells me, was 7% for our salaried staff. We shifted to a paid music director, as Ellen has noted. We have significantly higher insurance costs. Basically, Don's comment here is that we're going to have to find ways to address this. And the clearest path to a balanced budget is to increase giving from the congregation. Our pledge income has been topping out at around $280,000. I think this last year we didn't actually make the goal, so some of us see that we're maybe, this is at this point our ceiling. And Don suggested it needs to go at least to 300,000 or higher. Otherwise, we'll have little choice but to cut costs, and there aren't many areas in which we can do that. Most likely, it will have to come from the music program and or the building repairs and maintenance. And we obviously want to avoid drawing down our investments to cover deficit spending. The finance team and the church leadership are focused on these issues and will continue to discuss them with the congregation. One other development, and I was just asked about this just the other day by a member, we've been discussing the creation of a benevolence fund. This would be, Ellen, you can help me out. This is just to aid members in need, right?
We'll call it an assistance fund, and it's, yes, it's going to be a fund that we can, so sometimes we get requests for covering a month of rent for somebody who's about to be evicted. I'm not talking about congregation members or utilities or what have you. And in the past, the Mission and Social Action Committee has given out of their budget, and we thought that if we could set up a fund just, that we just have available on an ongoing basis, that might be a better way to do it. And you'll be getting more information about this because nothing's been completely decided yet. Also, I want to say very good news. We have another bequest that I literally just got in the mail from Georgie and Chester Dunham. So, yay.
Oh, very good, very good. Yeah, I mean, these things come in and we certainly appreciate it, but we can't budget for it. The people working on the benevolence fund are Pastor Ellen, Don Marshall, and present and future mission chairs, Emily and Ashley. Anyway, the finance team is going to review the plan and send it to the church council. I hope to have this up and running the next couple of months. Just some highlights, details from the report itself. Total income is $243,000. This is as of August 4th. Total income is $243,237, which is 61% of budgeted. Pledge income is $145,788, which is 52%. General contributions, $5,912, 66%. And under the category of memorial donations and requests, the total is $12,306. This is before whatever we've received from Dunham. So that includes another distribution from the estate of Miriam Collins, which has been in the amount of $10,377. And we earlier had received $27,800 from that estate, which means that Miriam has, her bequest is more than $38,000. I'll just say here, most of you probably don't even know, probably don't remember Miriam Collins because it goes back a few years. But she and her husband, Bill, were longtime members of the church. And Miriam is remembered, and Jane can attest to this, she's remembered for, among other things, her Christmas cookies, right? Yeah, she's a very sweet person. And of course, the church greatly appreciates this, her bequest. Kinderhouse rent is $37,045, which is 58%. And the utility share is $4,324, which is 68%. I'm not sure about that discrepancy. And Serena, I have a feeling that if they're one payment ahead and don't realize it. Yeah. But facility use is $17,252, which is 86% of the budget. And that includes one group's payment of $7,500, which they pay in their own discretion for 2022 usage. Total expenses, $228,738, which is 58%. We're almost finished here. Don notes that for salary staff, the financial statement now combines the salary and tax Social Security figures into a single payroll category for each individual. And our financial statement shows a slight overall loss for the year because the 2023 budget included an amount for music director payroll that was $997 less than it should have been. The church's operating budget currently has a net surplus of $14,499. Cash position is $97,834, with $85,250 available for operations. And of that amount, $45,892 is designated for the capital campaign. We transferred the remaining surplus from 2022, which is $36,500, into our undesignated fund. In sum, total income $640,678, total expenses $674,000. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not in sum. This is the capital campaign. Total income $640,678. Total expenses $674,315, and Don will be able to answer any questions about that later. And if you have any questions on this, I'll try to answer or call on some of the people. Any questions? Okay, then thank you.
Thank you, Robert. And now it's time for Don Blanchon to give an update on the capital campaign.
Thanks so much, Heidi. Summer greetings from New England. I'm sorry I could not be there in person with you all, but I send you good wishes for a great rest of the week and a wonderful Labor Day weekend. I'm happy to provide you with some high-level information regarding the campaign. I want to first start, before I get to those few notes, with some gratitude and some thank yous. First and foremost, to Vanessa Andrews, Mary Jane Glass, John Buchanan, and Edmund Frost, who have been an amazing set of trustees and continue to work and support the church in big and small ways. And so just always want to recognize their work. And then again, for Heidi, Pastor Allen, and for Meg's continued support along the way as we try to finalize the campaign. We're now in the last 5 or 6 months, which is great. And then lastly, obviously the finance team, Don Marshall, John Tishy, Robert Glass, for their continued support as we report and fulfill our fiduciary obligations to the congregation. So many thanks. It takes a village to do this. And I'm grateful we're almost to the finish line. A little bit, there's a couple of visuals available, and I hope we will be able to put, I think Caroline's the only one online, so we may not necessarily need to pop it up on the screen, but in the sanctuary, there might be 1 or 2 posters. And so just to share a little bit of what they are, the first one is about the numbers in the campaign right now. When we did the posters, we were just under 850,000 pledged. Robert Glass just reported that we have about $640,000 that came in that we had cash in hand, if you would. The remaining 200,000 or so are actually tied up in a small number of pledges, larger donors who obviously have until the end of this year to fulfill those obligations. And so we're going to encourage all of those folks to make sure that they make good on their pledge. But that would bring you up, the outstanding pledges would bring us north of 850,000. And I'm happy to share with you our gross number right now in pledges is 50 pledges at a total of about 870,000. There's one gift that Robert does not have yet that he will have soon. We have a congregation member who is increasing their pledge, and we're grateful for that. It's a nice segue for me to share that if you are in the financial position between now and the end of the year to increase your pledge to the campaign, we'd most welcome it. We're getting really close. We're now inside of 15% to our goal of $1 million. And again, as someone who's been in the church for a few years, and this is our second campaign, it is an amazing statement of commitment to the church and to our mission. And so again, thank you all to those who have pledged and fulfilled their pledge, as well as those who can financially do more right now. So thank you. The next thing I want to do is just a little bit on the projects and kind of what's next. And so there's a second visual or poster, which is really about a rendering from the Lowell Street side about one of our 2 major projects, which is the building accessibility ramp. And this is a rendering that we had done a while ago, just because we had been asked over a number of months to kind of show, okay, what would it look like for the ramp that was approved as part of the campaign? What might it look like, and how would it play out visually for people? And so we had this rendering done. I want to thank Catherine Stevens, who helped me with both of the posters. And just those posters will be available in the parlor for people to look at and peruse. And as we get more information and more from the architects and have some more renderings, we'll be happy to share those, most likely either through a weekly email or in the parlor. With respect to this project, as we shared, we hired an architect earlier in the late spring, early summer. That architect is in the midst of working through a set of construction drawings. We expect those drawings to be done sometime in the fall, and that those would then be permitted in the late fall into the winter. And then the construction for the project is likely to take place sometime in the springtime. I've had some conversations with the trustees as well as with Pastor Ellen. There's obviously timing issues in the springtime for Holy Week and other considerations. We'll work through that and make sure that we give the congregation significant notice. Regardless of the actual timing of the project, we have talked with the architect as well as with a few potential contractors. We would not take both of the doors out, the parlor door and the sanctuary door at the same time. So we're never not going to have access on the Lowell Street side. So just know that that's the case. And then the second major project I just always want to remind people, because we've had so much focus on the ramp over the last few years, we have a mission tithe to make. And that mission tithe is 10% of the total campaign value. And so right now, with the additional gift, we'll probably right now have an $87,000 mission tithe if no other funds are raised between now and the end of the year. And so we have those two elements that we're going to fulfill over the next 6 to 10 months. And again, I'm grateful and thankful for everyone's commitment. It's been a long 5 years, and it was interrupted significantly by COVID, but great staying power by the congregation. And again, I can't thank you enough for your continued support. As a human being, I'm really looking forward to the day when we can we move on from this campaign and actually spend more and more time on what's next. So I'm happy to take any comments or questions people have. I'm happy to answer any questions about numbers or any other substance. So thanks for your time today.
Kinder House was gone so as not to disrupt their activities. What has changed now that, I mean, as recently as June, when I inquired about this, you said it was going to be in August. So what is the difference now that it's going to be, and how will that disrupt Kinder House?
So Alan, I think I got all of your question. You're asking about the potential timing of the construction of the ramp vis-a-vis Kinder House's day-to-day operations.
Yeah, it looks like it's not going to be August, but before June.
I don't think I heard the last part. Are you?
It's not going to be August, but it's going to be in the first half of the year, which
Don,
means
he's asking about, we had talked about August because Kinder House isn't there, and we had, sort of emphasized that would be the perfect time to do it. So he's wondering how this affects things.
Oh,
if
sure.
We don't do it during the month of August.
Kinder House nor our own desire ultimately doesn't affect the schedule as much as it does when we can get the drawings done, permitted, and then how does the construction impact the church's operations, including Kinder House. The absolute ideal time, which we set over a year ago, would have been this summer, this August. Had we been able to get the work done, that would have been great. Kinder House would have been out. We would have had kind of the run of the mill. We have subsequently spent time with Kinder House on other matters, but specifically discussed the timing of the project. And from their standpoint, the construction on Lowell Street doesn't impact them at all. The people that largely use the parking in front of the doors on Lowell are largely John Eaton families. Their staff doesn't significantly use it for parking. As you know, it's time sensitive during certain times of the day. And much of the Kinder House staff parks up Lowell or takes mass transportation to the area and then walks to the site. For drop-off, it's the same as always. The drop-off will be on Lowell for many people, and the families will walk in. Again, we'll do it in such a way that we will give Kinder House as our tenant notice in advance. But I recently met with them in late July, and they had no issues whatsoever with the timing of the project. In fact, I specifically asked them, is there a time of the year that's better or worse? And they're like, other than August, there really isn't. So our process changed largely because of the timing of securing an architect and the timing of getting drawings done and getting permitted. And we'll continue to keep Kinder House in the loop on the conversation about actual timing.
Thank you.
Doesn't seem like one more question.
Don, this is John Tishy. I'm wondering, is there any concern about having enough money to carry things, finish the construction? It seems like income has kind of trickled off a bit. So that's my question. Do we think we'll have enough?
Yeah, John, you're kind when you say income's trickled off. I mean, we trickled off. We've had a lull of about 18 months where we really haven't had a net new pledge. But that's really common because the campaign's been going on so long. We have a small number of people in the congregation in terms of number of pledging units. And so in that respect, I haven't really, there was never going to be a massive uptake in year 4 or 5. There really wasn't. Where we're going to pick up some ground is some individuals' financial circumstances have changed in different directions, and we'll be able to pick up a little bit of support there. And they've talked to me privately about that. And then the second element, which is something that the trustees talked openly about when the campaign was planned and then voted on, was we have undesignated and contingency funds in our investments. And we always said that should we not be able to get to the $1 million goal, we could make decisions about using the investments accordingly. That said, that's not the best path forward for us. Our preferred route is to raise the additional money. I will tell you, in the last set of math we did, John, if all of the pledging comes in as is right now, we are close to being able to fund a $140,000 ramp and an $85,000 to $90,000 tithe. So we have, right with the commitments we have right now, enough money to do that. Now, if the ramp comes in and it's $250,000 in costs, we have a different question. But right now, the trustees do not have a concern about that. And then I just want to be mindful, Robert Glass shared, our investments are up significantly. And as a practice, the trustees have constantly supported the idea that bequests that come in to the church should probably be put in our investments, because bequests aren't things we traditionally budget for, as Robert mentioned, and they should be seen as something where it's funds that are available for one-time expenses or other really significant urgent needs. I mean, we traditionally don't see, urgent budget needs as meeting that test, although it could. And so I share that, John, in the spirit of transparency. On surface, it looks like there's money to be able to do the rest of this, absent the construction ramp cost estimate coming in at some sky high number.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, Alan has a.
Actually, I don't have a question. I just want to first thank the trustees, then second thank the congregation, and just remind everyone that in addition to the ramp that has yet to be built, already we have an entirely new pipe system in our basement floor, a completely renovated downstairs area, 2 new bathrooms, one of which is ADA accessible. And am I forgetting anything, Don?
No, some of the.
There's a ton of work that's already happened, and we were actually, as much as COVID might have put a little bit of a pressure on the financial aspect of things, it was a blessing in that we got to do a whole bunch of work while neither our congregation nor the preschool was in session, and therefore we weren't impacted by it. And also we did that work before the inflationary rise and the supply chain issues, et cetera. So that was really excellent.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you, Don. And so we're coming to the end of the agenda. The final item before we close is, does anyone have any new business? No new business. I don't think we have to do Robert's rules to vote on closing the meeting, so I shall declare the meeting closed. Thank you all for coming.